Okay, welcome everybody to today's webinar, proudly brought to you by Tourism and Events Queensland. My name's Susan Maynard. I'm one of the digital coaches here at TEQ, and today's webinar is on digital marketing for the China market. So I'm hoping that you're here today because of that very reason, that you're either in the China market or you're looking to get into the China market. And hopefully from the information that we provide you with today that will make you go to your next steps, or help you with your next steps I should say. So first of all, just before I do get going, just so that you know that this is being recorded, and hopefully it won't be too long before it's up on YouTube for everybody to watch at a later time, and for anyone who didn't get the chance to join us today, then they'll get the chance to watch it as well. So welcome again, and if there is anybody in particular who is not wanting to be recorded, if they have questions down through the webinar time, just let me know that you don't want to be put onto the recording, and then I can always answer your question on the side. So from here, I just want to let you know this is what we'll be, this is our next step here. So you're all muted at the moment, because if we didn't mute you, unfortunately the feedback from some people's microphones just gets a little bit much and we can't understand or hear what's going on. So you're all muted for the time being. But if you do have a question, there's a couple of ways that you can ask those. So you can see I've got a little screen grab there of your panel, of your control panel that you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen. So if you would like to ask a question, you've got a little questions box area there that you can enter, and that question will come to me directly from there. Or you can raise your hand. So you can see there I've got a little pointer there to the raise your hand. So what I might just do, just to make sure everybody sees that, can you all raise your hand? And then that way I know that you can hear me loud and clear, and that there's no issues with anybody. So it looks like we've just about got nearly everybody raising their hands. A couple more. Sherry, if you're there, I'll get you to raise your hand. And Graham, if you're there. Robin. Jose, I think you pronounce it as. And if anyone's having any problems with their mic or audio, just quickly send me a quick question, and then that way I know that everybody's okay. Doesn't look like I've got any questions coming in, so I'm going to put all your hands back down so I know that we're all good. And let's get started. So please ask. We have got quite a lot of information to get through today. So if you have got a question, please let me know, and if I'll answer it at that point in time or at the end, depending upon what the question is. But like I said, we've got quite a lot of information to get through today. So hopefully we'll get it all done within the hour, which I'm sure we will. Okay, so first of all, just to let you know that today's webinar for China, it is a very high-line information webinar today. So it's giving you some overarching information about how and what you can potentially do to get into the China market. It's not going right into, for instance, how to or what to post, for instance, on the China social media platforms. This is a very high-line information session, just to get those who are wanting to get into it started, and those who maybe have touched on it very briefly to give you some more information to help you get through those next steps. Okay, so very quickly, this is our agenda. So as you can see, we've got lots to talk about. So we're going to talk about why China, of course, what the research is saying, some additional knowledge that you will need to know but we won't cover today. We'll talk about websites, hosting, your digital agency option in China, web searching in China, social media, online travel agents, and then of course mobile, which we all know is very important at the moment. Okay, so let's get into it. So why are you here? So why do we want to be in that Chinese market? We have, at the moment, they've got over 1.1 billion people as their population, and 513 million of those are what's called a netizen, or their internet people and the citizens, so that's where the netizen term comes from. So they've got a lot of people online. So we want to capture that market. So how do we do that? Then of course, just so that you can see a comparison and just how much there is so much more potential in China yet to come. So just a comparison against the US, so you can see that map there clearly shows that China really at this point in time is only about 40% saturated with people who are on the internet. So it's so much more potential to come, and then you can see the US, for instance, you know, they're nearly 80% saturated of people who are on the internet. So it's, as you can see, we've got lots and lots of potential that we can access for China, and hopefully today will give you some of those pointers to get you in that right direction. So just so that you know, when we did this webinar and when we also have this as a workshop, which is a lot longer than an hour, of course, because we go into a lot more detail, but just so that you know, how did we come about all this information? So we just didn't do it ad hoc, and we just didn't do it, you know, off the top of our heads. We went and talked to a lot of people. We had expert interviews with tourism operators who are already working in this space and who are doing it well. So we had information from those guys. We also have obviously our Chinese-based tourism events Queensland staff who are based in China. So we've been talking to them a lot. Then of course we had a lot of independent travellers research and a lot of secondary research via the internet, of course, you know, the World Wide Web, which is an awesome source of information. And then of course Tourism Australia, because they are doing so much more research themselves. So we've touched base with them on multiple occasions. And so, you know, a lot of this research that we've done independently of our research, it's all available online for you to go and have a look at. So if you have the chance in the next few days to go and have a look, a lot of what we're talking today is supported by this independent research that we've done, and that's at tq.com.au/China. So it's all there for you to go through further. Then also for those who didn't know or weren't aware, ATDW, the Australian Tourism Data Warehouse, is in their final stages as we speak of completing the Chinese translations of all the listings on the ATDW. If you want more information, you can click through to the ATDW and they will give you further details of the updates and so forth. But that is happening as we speak. And as I said, it's almost on the finishing touches now, which is fantastic. So if anyone needs more information, you can just let me know and we can send that through for you. Okay. So some of the other things that you will need to consider, because we're only talking digital today, we're not talking about anything else but that. However, you really should be considering these other factors because they do play a big part in the overall concept of working in the Chinese market. So obviously the general Chinese consumer behaviour, so why do they do some of the things that they do when they are here in Australia or when they're here in Queensland? So what is their behaviour and why do they do it? Obviously the language is a big barrier and potentially can be something that can be overcome, but that's something you need to think about as a business. History, you have to take into account the history of China, the political side of it, why it's so hard to actually gain access into this Chinese market and so forth. So you really should look back into the history of why your business should be working into the Chinese market, and then of course the demographics of China. So, you know, what market or what potential market can your product suit? So we're not going to talk about that today. If we did, we'd be here for 3 days in a webinar, and I know, like probably a lot of you out there today, I don't have that time and you probably don't either, but it's available for you out there to access. All that information is out there. Okay, so that's just to consider those couple of things. So we also need to look at the big picture. So all our market research that we have done is all based on the FIT market that's coming out of China. So the group market is already stable and it's been out there for some number of years now and it's stable. So it's sitting there at about 48% of the Chinese travellers are part of that group market. So it's still very, very viable market. It's not to say that what we're saying today that you have to forego the group market to come into the FIT. We're not saying that at all. But what we're saying is now that we're seeing now a trend from the Chinese travellers. They are now coming out on their own in small family groups and coming and experiencing our destinations. So just bear that in mind, that that's what we're focusing on today is this FIT side, not the group side, because that is potentially very different. So we are focusing on this side. So this big picture here that we're just talking about is obviously there's the group and the FIT, and the FIT's got 52%, and that's a growing figure. We actually saw or heard that that's now gone to 57%, but we're just seeing the source of that. But that's just a hearsay comment at this stage, but definitely at this point we're looking at 48 to 52. If you're in that group market, what we're thinking is potentially that with your product at the moment that you might be going through an ITO, so an inbound tour operator. You're also potentially going through a domestic travel agent or even wholesalers based here in Australia. So that's your group market. The FIT market is obviously we're going to try and focus on those who are planning their holidays and their trips from China themselves. So this is why we've got here the things that you may need to consider when you're doing this. So a website, social media, mobile, online travel agents that are actually based in China, not the ones from here, and hosting. So they're the 5 areas that we will talk about today, and they're the 5 areas that I will give you a lot of information on today. So that's just the big picture, and of course the RTO, your regional tourism organisation, you should always try and fit them in to your overall plan because they have fantastic resources that can support you in your move into this FIT area. So please don't forget them. Utilise the resources, and then of course there's us as well. You've got some fantastic resources from our side of the picture as well. So let's talk about websites. So websites in China, a lot of the things are very common to our websites here, but there are a few key things that are slightly different. So obviously with the content left to right, so same thing for us. So it's the reading and the scanning from left to right for them just as much as it is for us. They like very clear, simple navigation structures. So think about your website right now. How far do I have to go into your website to find one piece of information? Is it 1 page? Is it 2 pages? Is it 5 pages? So if you're getting up into those higher figure pages, then that's a problem because people will not keep searching on a website if it's going to take them that long to find something. So very clear and simple. I mean, it's even the same here for us. It's not much different. People will not spend the time to look on your site if it's very hard to find. So keep that in mind. It should only be 1 or 2 clicks away from getting that information that I need. Avoid using Flash, JavaScript or iframes. So Flash, for a start, it cannot be seen on Apple products, or very limited visual on Apple products. And the JavaScript and the iframes, this is all coding. This is all the stuff that sits behind the scenes of your website. So, and these are the few things that the Chinese government have restricted. So if you have any of this in your website currently, you probably wouldn't be able to break through that wall or that barrier into the Chinese market because the government has restricted what people can see. So it's very interesting when we start to talk about the government restrictions and what they can or what the consumer can and can't see. Images. Now this is really, really interesting compared to us here. The Asian market or the Chinese market in particular are very literal when they look at your images. So if you can have a look, these few images that I've got here, so for instance the first one with the couple swimming in the ocean, notice the clouds in the sky. Now the Chinese market will take this very, very literally. So if you had no clouds, for instance, in the sky, and they came to your destination and to your product and it was raining, they would be complaining because your images had blue sky. Now, you're probably sitting there going, what? But it's very true. They will complain because your images are depicting something that's not currently happening. So having some clouds in the sky is a good thing, even though we don't like to see that because we want to portray Queensland as a beautiful sunshine state and that unfortunately lately we've had a lot of rain. If they were here during that rain, they would expect to see something to show that in those images. So at the moment, so having those clouds in the sky, obviously not showing thunderstorms and things like that, we don't want to totally scare them away, but having something like that in the sky is beneficial for you to capture that market. The second one in with the teddy bear and the bathrobe and the cookies and the milk on the bedside table, this is what they will expect. So if you're adding additional images like that into your product and they physically will not receive this, then they will complain. as I said to you before, they take it very literally. So you must be very, very wary of what's in your images when you're putting these on your website for China market in particular. And then the last one, of course, if you're showing toiletries like that in your bathroom, then that's what they're going to expect. So, you know, pretty much don't overindulge your images, but be very clear. Now, also when we're talking about, I've got their images captioned, so that's good for not just the Chinese market, but for our market as well. So what is the image that I'm actually looking at? So actually name them and caption those images so that I can clearly see where I'm going or what I'm potentially going to see. They also like to see people in the images. Now there's no rule as such of what people, but they do like to see, this is for the FIT market by the way. Group market is very different. If we were going for the group market, all they'd want to see is the Asian people or the Chinese people in the images. But for the FIT market, they do like to see a mix. So every now and again, if you've got the ability to get some Chinese nationals that can appear in your photos, that's a good thing. But then they also like to see some local faces in those photos as well. So it's a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to people in the images for the Chinese market, in particular for the FIT market. Group, as I mentioned, is a little bit different. They don't want to see buildings. They have enough of buildings. They're surrounded by concrete galore in China. So they want to see your natural scenery, your landscapes, the beaches if you've got them, or the outback, you know, with various things in the outback, or rainforest, or whatever the case may be. Stay away from the buildings if you can help it, because it's something that they don't like to see. Also, they do like to see quirky. So, you know, the quirky images. So it might be something that's a little bit of humour in it, but don't go to the extreme. Don't go to the other end of humour or the other end of quirky, because they will shy away from that. So something that is you know, it might be a little quirky photo or something on the beach or something in the rainforest or something like that that will capture their attention but not necessarily scare them away. Also be very, very careful with overly photoshopped photos. They are very, very knowledgeable in this arena, and they can pick a photoshopped photo. So be very wary of that. So just stay true to your product. So whatever it is that you're showcasing, make sure that's what they're potentially going to look and use and feel when they actually get here. So just stay very true to your photo and to your product, which you should do anyway, regardless of what market you're working with. Okay, so that's with images. We'll just move on to the next. They also love their videos. So where you can provide videos, that is fantastic. So there is a local, and I'll talk about these platforms a little bit down the track, but there are platforms that are particularly for the Chinese market, and that's UQ, so very similar to YouTube, but it's called UQ, and that's their major video platform in China. So they do love that. So they, again, utilise a mixture of Chinese nationals with Australians as well in those videos, and if you need to, you might need to get some translations at the bottom of that video. So think about what language you're going to actually have people speaking, and if you have to translate, then do that at the bottom, so that people, both sides of the fence, so to speak, can understand what's going on in the video. This is a big thing. Assist them in saving face. So when we're talking about saving face, they do not like to be put in an undesirable light, so to speak. So for instance, a very good example, I had an operator who had some Chinese go onto a fishing tour. Now they went out onto the boat, yep, fantastic, but they would not touch the fishing rod and the bait and cast the actual line out to catch the fish. But what they did do is at the end, when the fish was caught, a photo was taken with them holding the fish, saying, look what I've just caught. So what you're doing there is you're saving their face, you're giving them the credibility. Yep, we went out on the tour. I may not have caught the fish. You know, for them, that part's not the important part. It's what's the end result. So just be careful with anything like that. So if you can do that, support them in that saving face arena, so to speak. Chinese translation is obviously preferable if you can on your website. So don't rely on Google Translate because it doesn't translate correctly. So be very wary of that. As I mentioned before, ATDW is translating your pages at the moment or your data at the moment into Chinese. But if you want more information that you've got listed on your ATDW membership, then you will have to look into somebody doing that for you. On that, if you're providing translated content on your site, then you need to provide Chinese responses. So if you've got an inquiry form or a booking system, then it does need to be considered to also respond in Chinese, because you're taking the time to actually do it in the first place, then you may as well respond at the same time in Chinese. How-to information and destination information is a big thing for them. They need to be basically they're hands held as much as you possibly can. So the more information you can provide on your destination, the better. And even going down to bus timetables, train timetables, taxis information, what they can expect to see and do in your area. So very, very detailed information is a great way to capture their attention. Provide different book and pay options. So with our research, there was no true and tried and tested answer for this. So some people said yes, they love the ability to book and pay in full online. Others said book and pay a deposit online. So this is something that you'll need to work out for your business. There's no rule to this. As part of our research that we did, no one, like it was a 50-50 response, so to speak. So as long as you've got that booking ability online for the Chinese market, then that is sufficient. And then how you'd like them to pay or what amount you'd like them to pay is totally up to you. So that is your decision in this aspect. Content to include broader terms. So they don't know individual cities or destinations, for instance. They know Australia as a destination. They may possibly know Queensland as a destination, but to get to your destination, they probably don't know that. So when you're thinking about your copy, your content, include these broader terms to make sure that you're capturing the whole market for you. Also providing toll-free international numbers. This is one thing that did come out in our research quite heavily, that the consumers expected a toll-free number to be put out there for them to contact if they needed to. But then, of course, you're going to have to consider the time difference. So just be wary of that when you do consider it. Okay. Now, hosting. There's some issues with not hosting your website in China. Now, because of those government restrictions or the barrier that they've put up, the government are very restrictive of what they let through. So these are the things, if you don't host in China, some of the things that could happen. So you could be blocked altogether based on the content or based on what you've got on your website, or maybe only a couple of pages get through. Your slow times for loading could be reduced greatly by not having it hosted in China. And then, of course, not being actually indexed with those local search engines. So the big one in China is Baidu. So just like your website here in Australia, you had to index your website here. So same thing for them over there. And, of course, if you do have an account on Baidu, it may take longer to process anything. So if you're doing like an AdWords campaign or something like that, it may take a little bit longer. However, now there is a problem. So if you didn't host in China, that's all those issues. But the next issue is hosting in China. To be able to do that, you have to have a legal business presence in China. So what you need to consider is how you're going to do that. Now, to be able to actually have a business that's recognised in China, you do have to use an agency in China, because you can't simply just host from here in Australia. They won't let you do it. You actually have to have someone who's representing you on your behalf in China as a legal business presence. So that's a little bit, it's a bit, unfortunately, it's a bit of a catch-22. So if you don't host in China, you've got those issues, but to host in China, you need to have access to a digital agency. So unfortunately, there's no ifs or buts around it. That's the only way you can do it. But in saying that, there are quite a few digital agencies that are out there that can do that for you, and who have done it quite well for some operators that we've worked with previously. Just quickly, I've got a couple of questions from, I've got one from Nicole. She's asked about Skype and using Skype in China, and instead of using the international toll-frees. Skype is unfortunately not hugely used in China, but I would still offer it because there are still people who use it, and we'll talk about some other platforms in a moment that you'll be able to utilise. So yes, I would give them the ability to use Skype if they can, but just remember then you need someone who's on this side of the fence, so to speak, who can then speak to them in Chinese. So that's the catch that we've got there. I've also got a question there earlier from Graham about having a copy of the presentation. You will see the copy of the presentation on the recording. Unfortunately, we do not email out the presentations to you all, but you'll see a copy of this on the recording after we finished. I hope that answers those questions for you. Okay. Now, when you are looking at a digital agency, just like here in Australia, if you're going to access someone here, these are some of just the standard questions that you can ask about that agency in China. So here, for instance, do they support all the online marketing requirements that you're going to need? Can they give you a track record or a portfolio of successful campaigns prior to yours? Biggest one, obviously, out of all of them, do they have a Chinese team? I mean, there's no point if there's, say, for instance, an Australian-based company, but they're in China, but they don't have a Chinese-speaking team. That's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. So that's obviously a very important part of that process. Do they have accreditation, awards, associations, and so forth? Are they transparent? So is what they're going to offer you exactly what they're going to offer you, or is there any hidden items or anything that's sort of underlying there that sort of comes out down the track and they're going to charge you more money for? So just be very, very aware of that, and that's the same here in Australia. If you're going to, even if you need a website rebuild here in Australia, you should be thinking about those. And always read the fine print. So make sure that you've got everything under your belt. Any copyright issues, any ownership issues, or anything like that are clearly pointed out to you before you get started, because otherwise it could end up in a bit of a trap down the track. So what can they do for you? Pretty much everything that they can do for you here in Australia, they can do in China as well. So obviously website optimization, you definitely need some sort of analytics or reporting method, because if you can't see what traffic's happening to your site and what's going on, then there's no point. Social media marketing and management, so not only can they set it up for you, but can they manage it for you? So again, do they have a Chinese team who can respond to those platforms? And I'll discuss some platforms in a moment, but can they actually do that for you? Can they also help you with your reputation management? So like TripAdvisor here in Australia, they have platforms over in China that's purely review-based sites. So can they manage those? Can they do the hosting, or do they have to outsource the hosting? Can they do search engine optimization for Baidu? Can they respond to any sort of customer service that needs to be responded to? And can they even do email marketing? So, and that's another big factor in China. They do a lot of email marketing there as well. So can they do all this for you? And if they can't, it may be time to sort of consider maybe another agency over there. You need someone who can be an all-rounder, who can perform all these different areas for you for obviously a fairly decent cost as well. You don't want to be shelling out hundreds and thousands of dollars. You want to be doing something for you that's viable for your business at the end of the day. Okay, so just so you can have a look. So this is Hamilton Island, just as an example. So you can see this is clearly a Chinese translated website. Now, interesting enough, though, this particular website for Hamilton Island, they do not host in China, but it is a fully translated website. So just so that you can see, and they do receive quite a lot of bookings and inquiries from the China market. They still can access the site because obviously the government has not restricted or banned any part of their website for Hamilton Island, so it is still getting through. So just bear that in mind. It is possible to still get through to the China market without hosting, just so that you know. But if you really want it to work well, then hosting is obviously the key to this part here. And notice some of the clouds in the sky. So you can see there that they have got those happening. So then the next one Just so you can see, this is Tourism with Sundays. They went down with a very large strategy to go into the China market. Now this one is fully translated, as you can see, and it is hosted in China. They work with a digital agency over in China. They found one that's working for them, and the pricing structure was quite good, and they are having great results so far. So it is possible to do both. You can host or not host in China. It just depends on the results that you're looking for. So it is doable, so don't think it's not. Okay, so the search engines in China, so the big player obviously for China is Baidu. Google were originally in China, but they had a lot of issues with the Chinese government and they were asked to leave. So they are actually based in Hong Kong. So it's still part of China obviously, but that's where their office is, in Hong Kong. So people can access Google, the Chinese consumers can access Google, but they need to go through the Hong Kong side of things to access it. But in saying that, their biggest player is Baidu, and everybody, you can see 83% of their market uses Baidu on the internet. And you can see there over 35 million web searches are made every hour in China. Huge, absolutely huge figures. So obviously, when we're talking about that sort of search in China, this is a market that you can definitely get yourself into, as long as you just go along with a plan. Don't go into the China market without a plan, because it will not work otherwise for you. Okay, so SEO for Baidu, just some points. So obviously you'll get better results and better traffic results if your site is hosted in a local domain in China. So that's going through that digital agency option. So you will have much better results. But like I said before, it's not impossible to not have your site hosted in China and still get good results. So I know that's a little bit of a mixed message there that we're saying, but we just wanted to give you both sides of that coin. So if you didn't want to go through a digital agency in China itself, it is possible, but it just all comes down to what the product is that you're sending out there to them and how can they find you. So just so that you know. So you do need to monitor your content very carefully due to their censorships and their restrictions and their bans and so forth. So for instance, a good example there is if you were a hotel, for instance, or accommodation place, and you provided a day spa or a massage facility, the massage part of it would be blocked, because that to them is deemed inappropriate for their consumers. Massage to them is not a good thing. So you would need to find alternate words or alternate content that would get around that particular issue. So you need to be very careful. Now, if you ever wanted to know what sort of content they do ban, you can just go onto Google and they'll provide you with a list of words. I've actually done it myself. You can search for censorship words for China and they'll bring up a list that you can have a look at. So hopefully you're not in there at the moment. But things also like nudity, profanity, Aussie slang, they do not understand our Aussie slang, so that will get restricted and closed off straight away. They don't understand it, so they don't like it, so they shut you off. So just be very, very careful in that respect. Obviously, having your Chinese website translated into their traditional or simplified Chinese language is probably the best. There are multiple and lots, actually, of different dialects and different languages that they use within China, but the simplified Chinese is the most favoured one over anything else, especially for English-speaking sites where it's coming from. Identify the local search keywords. So what we might call a hotel may not be, it might be something totally different to them. So it might be called a resort, for instance, but that's also considered a hotel. So be very careful with the words that you need to identify. The keywords and the meta tags are important for them. They very much still work on the meta tags. I know Google it's not as a high sought after side of things for Google on our side, but for them it is. So the keywords and the meta tags are very, very important on theirs. High quality links, just like us, that's what they're looking for. So for good search results for them, they want high quality links. So connecting with like online travel agents in China is a good thing, because their online travel agents over there produce some massive, massive traffic. So if you had a link to one of them or a link back from one of them, that would be perfect, and you'd get some great results from that. Pay-per-click campaigns or AdWords, for instance, in China is very, very well accepted. It's actually opposite to us. So here in Australia, we've got the rule that 20% of people will click through on a paid ad and 80% will go through a natural listing. It's the opposite over there. So 80% will click on a paid ad more so than a natural listing, because their perception is if you're paying for your product to be appearing in an ad, then you must have a great product and you must be making some money and have a good budget to be able to do it. So the expectation for a pay-per-click campaign in China is very, very good, and the results are fantastic. So if you ever wanted to look into that. And then, of course, to really get your rankings and your search results very well received on Baidu, you need to have your website indexed on Baidu, like I mentioned before. So having that option is a great thing, but to do that, you need to be hosted in China. So you've got a little bit of a catch-22 happening on a couple of occasions, but it's all this information you can find for your product and see whether or not it is suitable for your product. Just so you can see, this is what their search results look like. So very, very much like a Google results page, but you can clearly see the at the top there, your paid listings. Sorry, oops, I was on the wrong screen then, sorry. So these ones here, for instance, they're your pay-per-click ads on the left-hand side. So they're the ones that you can do, just like what we can do here with Google AdWords. The ones on the right-hand side, they're a yearly listing. So these are a lot more money, as you can imagine, but you're there for the year and they rotate. The top three will always stay in this position and they'll rotate between themselves depending upon the money that they're spending. Then the listings from 4 through to 10, they will just rotate on a every search results page, they will just rotate through. So if you're paying big bucks, you'll be at the top of the page all the time for a whole year, as you can imagine, but it's also quite dear when you think about it too. Then these ones here with the green circles, these are just your natural listings. So very much like a Google results page, so your paid are at the top and then your natural are below. But the difference being, as I mentioned before, the paid ads are clicked through a lot more so than your natural in China, because they love the paid ads. Okay, on to social media. So this is their answers. So in that inner ring in the middle, you can see Facebook and LinkedIn and Foursquare and Twitter and so forth. That's all the Western versions. So that's all ours. Then on the outside ring, they're all theirs in comparison to. So you can see there's multiple ones for each type of our platform. And they do this because simply they've got the population to support it. They've got over 1 billion people in their country, so of course more than one Facebook version, for instance, is viable for them and it works. So you've got lots there, and this is a really good diagram of some of the ones that are out there. And just to give you an idea, they've got an average 2.7, nearly 3 hours per day online, which is pretty big compared to here in Australia. And they've got in 1 minute, so 60 seconds, 52,000 messages microblog. So like Twitter, it's a microblog. So 52,000 messages are tweeted or sent every 60 seconds. So massive amounts of traffic and massive amounts of people that you could access. So fantastic. Okay, so the top social media platforms in China, these are the ones. So this one here, which looks like an eye type thing, this is Sina Weibo. Sina Weibo is similar to our Twitter. It's similar. There are some differences still, but that's probably the best way to explain it. Tencent with the little penguin, one is very similar to Facebook, and it also does instant messaging. Qzone is another one that's similar to Facebook as well as Douban. It's a Facebook similarity there too. Renren is probably the most popular one that they use. It's closest to Facebook. It's very good for photo sharing on that one. Xiaopeng is similar to Foursquare and has a very young user market, so the young teenagers to early 20s, so very young market on that one. UQ, is their equivalent to YouTube. Kaizen is similar to Facebook photo, very good for photo sharing and so forth. And then 51.com is another one that's similar to Facebook. So they're all the very high used end ones over in China. Now, even though it looks like they don't have a lot of users, like 300 plus million, 550 plus million, but there's so many people there, they're sharing the love, so to speak. So they're putting it out there with different platforms. Now, for travel in particular, these are the big ones for us. So for the travel market, these are the ones that, out of our research anyway, these are the ones that we've come across that have been used more so in that travel side. So Renren, Sina Weibo. Now Taiba Baidu is the Google equivalent. You know how Google has lots of varying products, so you can use chat, you can use documents, a calendar, and all sorts of things for Google. This is Taiba Baidu does the same thing. It's got very, very similar Google products in there. Kaizen is another one that's similar to Facebook, and then Tencent for instant messaging. So they're the big ones that are used for travel-related products. So this is Sina Weibo, just so that you can have a look and see what it feels like and what it's about. So this is our page for tourism, and that should say Tourism and Events Queensland. Forgot to update that bit. This is ours, so that you can see. We usually market it and brand it to anything that's happening at the time. So this was obviously for the turtle season. We've branded that one for turtle season. So here in the round circle, just so that you can understand, so there's 255 products or people we are following as Tourism and Events Queensland. We've got 20,724 followers, so they're the people in China who are following our product, and that's how many posts that we've done, so nearly 2,000 posts. So very similar to the Twitter, as I mentioned before. The one main difference is that the videos are actually embedded inside Sina Weibo, whereas for Twitter they're not actually in Twitter, they're a link out to Twitter. So that's the difference there, or one of the main differences anyway. Oh, sorry. One of the main differences there. So we're getting some great results out of this. For us, what we've found is competitions work really well. Voting with questions work very well on Sina Weibo, and then merging ideas. For instance, so if you've got a food festival and a music festival, and merging those two ideas together. So we've got some very good results on that, and then they love to see holiday deals with a price. So very different for us here in our Western platforms. We don't showcase prices very much on the Facebook and Twitters, because it is a social aspect for us, but for them, they do. So they do showcase the pricings and that sort of thing on their side. As I mentioned before, the travel review platforms, they've got those as well. These are the two big ones in China, Luping, the one on the right, and Shongyu on the left. They're the two big ones. So very much like TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor does have an equivalent in China, and it's called DAO, so DAO, and it is owned and managed by TripAdvisor, and it still has the same look and feel as their Western site, so to speak, but it's obviously in Chinese, so they've got that one over there too. So these are all the things that you need to consider if you're going to run in the Chinese market. So something to think about as an overall strategy for your social media in China. So for the consumers in China, they have a very high status or follow people with high statuses in China. So and it's not just the celebrities, it's people who have got a high social media following. So just like here in Australia, we've got certain personalities who you wouldn't know as a celebrity, but you would know if you're in the online digital world, that they might have millions of followers on Twitter, or they might have millions of followers on their blog or something like that. They use people like that in their social media arena over there. So if you can get hold of anything like that, or anyone like that, that will do wonders for your profile. Obviously also use simplified Chinese and respond in Chinese as well. Now once they're here in Queensland though, so I know I'm talking a lot about how to capture them in China, but once they're here, just a couple of things to think about. Provide those location-based networks. So the ones that are similar to Foursquare and the Facebook check-in here in Australia, provide the Chinese equivalent for them here in Australia once they're here, because they love showing off to their family and friends back home. So if you can give them that access, so again, you'd have to set that up from the Chinese side, but if you can get them onto those Jiaping, for instance, that I mentioned before, the one that's the Foursquare equivalent, then they'll love it and they'll use it because they love to showcase what they're doing back home. QR codes are very big in China, so if you've got the ability to use QR codes here in Australia, I would. So QR is quick response codes. If you're not sure of what that means, there's a tourism e-kit that talks about QR codes as well, so I won't go into the explanation of that. The other big thing, and some of you will probably go, well, Susan, we can't do that because it's not viable for us. They are expecting free Wi-Fi access while they're here. They get it in China. Wherever they go in China, they get free Wi-Fi for them to use. They expect it when they get here. And a lot of them, when they are doing their searching and their bookings and so forth, they will look for premises that provide that for them to use when they get here. So just bear that in mind. I know you're probably thinking, oh, that's going to cost me too much money, or whatever the case may be. Well, you can embed it into your rates. You can cost it in so that people, you know, they're getting it, but you're also making that money back on it as well. If you're worried about how much download or what they are downloading, put a security password on it if you have to. That's fine, but let them have the free access to Wi-Fi because they are expecting it when they get here. So just bear that in mind. It is something that's being talked about by Tourism Australia and by us about providing that free Wi-Fi for your guests. And it's not just the Chinese market. It's most of the international markets now are saying, where's my Wi-Fi? They're searching for Wi-Fi free premises and so forth. Even when I travel, I will look for free Wi-Fi places to stay and where I can go to access that free Wi-Fi, because it's no longer a value-added part to your product. It is now an expectation. So just bear that in mind when you're thinking about this whole big picture of the Chinese market. And you're probably all sitting there hating me right now for saying that, but that's okay. I've got thick skin. Okay, so online travel agents in China, these are the big three. These three are the most popular ones in, thank you, Graham. I just got a message from Graham. He says, we still love you. So thank you. So yes, so these are the big three players for online travel agents: Ctrip, Elong and Qunar. Ctrip is probably by far the most used. It's got about 66% of the market on Ctrip, and they do pretty much everything to do with travel, so hotels, flights, tour packages, and a lot of other travel services as well, and that's a big one. Now Ctrip has just recently, I think in the last 6 months, have confirmed that SiteMinder now has access. If your booking system is SiteMinder, you now can load your inventory and your information onto Ctrip, which is a fantastic bonus if you're on SiteMinder, or the booking button is their Book Now button. Elong, very strong in hotel bookings, and Qunar is also seen as part of a site that's great for discounts and deals for flights and hotels and so forth. Now these are the three big players. There are more than that, but just bear in mind, you know, this is part of the research that we've done and what the results it's given us. So these are the big three players for the online travel agents. And mobile, it's big here. It's even bigger in China. They've just surpassed 1 billion mobile connections, which is a huge amount of mobiles when you think about it. Now, 35% of them have smartphones in China. Now, when I say in China, that's in China as a whole. But if you have a look at the next point, smartphone penetration is 50% in Tier 1 cities. So Tier 1 cities being your major cities like Beijing and Shanghai and a couple of others. So huge penetration of smartphones in those Tier 1 cities, and even in those other Tier 2 and Tier 3, they are climbing as we speak. So it's massive amounts of smartphones. At the moment, Androids hold the market, but not far off behind is iPhone, and they're closing very, very quickly. So iPhones are being sold hugely across China as we speak. So I wouldn't be surprised if iPhones surpass Androids in the next coming months, for instance. So really, at the end of the day, should you have a mobile website for China? Yes, you should, because that's what they're using to find people and to research and to book. And just like here in your site here in Australia too, if you haven't got a mobile website at the moment for your for your Australian audience, then I'd be onto that straight away, even before you attempted to get to the Chinese market. So definitely get onto that one straight away. So on mobile as well, just so that you know, just like for us here, so for instance, the iPhone, you use Safari. In China, though, they do have a dedicated mobile browser which is called UC browser. So if you have a look at that image, it's very similar to something that you probably would recognise, the old Firefox logo. So it's not usually too far behind. When we, in the Western side, when we develop something, China's very, very close behind to develop something with it. And then it usually overtakes their market, obviously, because it's a Chinese preferred platform then. So that's why in this case there's 300 million users that use UC browser. So what am I saying here? Make sure that when you do build your mobile site that it's compatible with this UC browser and other browsers as well, but just mainly this one. But your operating systems on iPhones and your Androids, they are all available to be used through this UC browser. So just bear that in mind when you are looking at building your website and your mobile site for the Chinese market. Okay, so just so that you know, apps are also very highly used, and it's very much the same here in Australia as well. We use apps pretty much for everything, and so do they. As you can see, have a look at the destinations one. This is one of our TQ research people. So you can see Germany, France, Sydney, Melbourne, then we got England, London, and this is all the one person's phone, by the way. So they got multiple apps for the same product even. New York, New York, New York, Seattle, San Francisco. So they love their apps. So if you've got the ability to be on an app or have your own app, that's fantastic. If you're an ATDW member, for instance, you already be appearing on multiple apps right now. So our Queensland one, your local RTO, if they've got an app, you'd most likely be listed on theirs and so forth. So, and some big Australian apps as well. So the About Australia, Discover Australia and so forth. So you already are on some apps. If you've got the budget, an app for yourself would be good, but it's not a mandatory part of this whole process. It's something, if you're going to do anything, I'd be at least having a mobile website, and then an app would be secondary in your first instance anyway. Okay, so some final tips before, and I'm nearly out of time, I've got 10 minutes, so we'll have a little bit of time for questions if anybody's got some. So some final tips, obviously optimise your website design for China. So think about all the things that we've just discussed so that your website can have the best possible chance it has in getting into that billion or that 500 million possible netizens that are online at this stage. Consider your content to be written for relevance and not purely translated. So like I said, don't rely on Google Translate because it will not work for you. So make sure that it's relevant to this market. Integrate your Chinese social media platforms. So if you're going to be on Sina Weibo, RenRen or Kaizen or any of those, integrate them as much as you possibly can so that they speak to each other, just like what we can here with ours, like Facebook and Twitter, they can talk to each other and so forth. So do the same with them. Obviously, having a Chinese domain and hosting in China is the ultimate way to access the Chinese market if you can. Now, as I said previously, that is also meaning to have a Chinese digital agency working on your behalf. That's the only way you can do those points. Consider your search terms for consider Chinese search terms for SEO. So like I was saying before, make sure you're using their search terminology rather than ours because it's not going to work. Work with Chinese OTAs, online travel agents, where you can because they have huge traffic on their site. So where you can leverage off that, do it. And then, of course, mobile browsing is the next big thing as well for China. So they're our final tips. Just some other things to consider, though. All those Chinese government restrictions that are in place, you need to be aware of those and see whether or not it's going to hinder you at all. Now, we had Chinese elections last year. Now, they are now seeing the flow-on effect from that because everything stopped. So there was no travel, there was nothing basically happened. So we've seen that flow-on effect at the moment, but it should come back up to speed again very soon. Issues based on language and culture obviously is a big thing. So if you are going down this path, it is highly recommended that you've got access to a Chinese-speaking national so that you can make the most out of this whole scenario. Understand the market. It's huge and it's complex. Okay, so don't go in with your eyes shut. Go in wide open and do a lot of research before you do anything else. Picking the right digital agency, of course, is going to be a big plus for you as well. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't think that if you go into the China market today that you're going to see results in 2 months, 6 months, even a year. It will not happen like that. It is a marathon trip. So if you're looking at going into this Chinese market right now, consider it being a long-term process, so 2, 3, 4, 5 years before you actually see some decent return on your investment. So just bear that in mind. It is a marathon. And please don't be thinking that anything I've told you today that you can go out there and start making mega money out of this quickly. It's not like that at all. This is the China Towards 2016 and the Project China information that we provided for you. So please go to that site. There's some great information and fact sheets for you available there. So please go and have a look at it all. It's all sitting there waiting for you to use. There's even fact sheets that are sitting there in Word documents that are already Chinese translated for you, and you can copy and paste it. So you don't even have to go and find someone to do it. If you wanted to start doing some little things now, you can do it now. So that's all available for you on those pages on that website address for you there. And I love this. Think global, but act Chinese. So it's a global market, you know, like European, US, all that sort of thing, but you've got to act Chinese. You've got to think about that particular market and what their needs and wants are, because it is very different from the European, UK, US market, Canadian market, and so forth. So it's very, very important to think like a Chinese when you're doing any of this. And that just there, that's thank you in Chinese, which is xie xie. So thank you for today, and I appreciate you taking the time. So we do run this as a workshop as well. So just bear that in mind. It might be in your region. And I have got a couple of questions that have come in, so I will just have a look. Okay, Stephen has come through with a question from about what are your thoughts about Instagram as it is not blocked in China. No, it's not blocked, but it is one it's a slow-moving beast. It is starting to get some good Chinese followers, but at this stage it hasn't got as many as the Western side followers, but it is growing. So if you've got the ability to access Instagram and use Instagram for your photo sharing side of things, then definitely go for it. But again, consider the language. So I would definitely make sure that you've got some Chinese translations in there as well. I hope that answers your question, Stephen. And Nicole, she's got would be keen on a digital marketing for the Japanese market. Okay. And yes, so thank you for that. I'll take that to our team and mention that we've had a request for the Japanese market as well. We were considering doing some other ones like this for Japanese market and for the Indian market and so forth. So it's good to hear that somebody is interested on that side of the fence as well. So I will definitely take that to the team. So thank you for that. And if we can be of any other assistance, the digital coaches, that's me, I'm the little short one. Myself and Mirko are the full-time coaches on board, and we can help you not just with the information today on the Chinese market, but we can help you with any of your other digital marketing needs as well. Jane is a part-time coach, so she's here only a couple of days, usually a week, but she's available as well. And we do come to your region quite often, so watch your RTO's newsletters, look out for our newsletters, and you'll soon see where we are and what we're doing at the time. So if we can be of any help to anyone, please give us a call or an email, and we are more than happy to help. And don't think there's no silly questions in the digital marketing space, so anything you think that you need help with, just give us a yell, and we're more than happy to help you out. So I'll just give one last round or opportunity for anyone who would like to ask a question. And Ruth has also mentioned, yes, thank you Ruth, that you're interested in other international areas as well. So I will definitely take that forward to our team and mention that this is something of interest in other areas as well. So we'll definitely do that, and I'll take that back. So any other questions at all? Okay. Doesn't look like I've got any other questions. Okay. No, it doesn't look like it. So thank you again, everybody. I appreciate you taking your time out for today's webinar. And as I said, if we can be of any further assistance, please do not hesitate to ask us or call us or email us. And next week's webinar will be up and running again at 11 o'clock. I'm not exactly sure on the topic, so I apologise. I didn't check that earlier. But if you go to our website name there, tq.com.au/digital ready, that'll have the next one on for next week. That one is not being delivered by me, but I think it's Mirko next week, so he'll be on board next week for you. So if there's anything else, that is wonderful. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. And on another note, for Anzac Day on Thursday, lest we forget, we should look after our soldiers, past and present. So that's on my personal note. So thank you again, and have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.